revolutionary sent $20. I know it wasn't your main point, but feminists have completely dominated men with the word pedo. They took what was natural male sexuality for all human history and conflated it with child fucking to shame men away from it and artificially increase the sexual value of hags. How old was Mary again when God impregnated her?
Dude, brother, so true. So true. That is so absolutely true. And listen, you niggas are not ready for that conversation, but Jeff Epstein, not a pedophile, but you're not ready for that conversation. All of his victims, 14 to 17. That's not pedophilia. But y'all niggas ain't ready for that conversation. People say that's normalizing pedophilia. No, that's defining pedophilia. Pedophilia is sex with children. Children are people that are before the age of sexual maturity. Now, you can have your opinion and your taste and your ethics and your morals, but after the age of 14, that is past the point of sexual maturity, just period, biologically.
What's going on, gang? Red Channels here. So recently, infamous, e-famous provocateur Nick Fuentes made some very controversial statements about Jeffrey Epstein and the age of consent. Now, initially, I thought it was very odd that he said these things. Initially, I assumed it was a function of perhaps ideological purity on his part or shock jock stuff. But then I thought there may actually be another utility to him saying this. You know, he's not just saying controversial things because that draws more attention to him and his platform. Obviously, I personally think splitting hairs over whether or not Jeffrey Epstein counts as an ephebophile or not is beside the point. Epstein was a predator, a terrible person, and without question should be known and hated by the entire planet. Though Nick dying on this particular hill, even though he's supposedly like a tradcath reactionary who may or may not be a sexual deviant, still didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You know, Nick has hammered Trump on this very issue of not being proactive enough in releasing the Epstein files. So why make this point when it kind of undercuts the other positions that he's already held? You know, to be fair, nothing Nick says is really that shocking to me. Morally speaking, he's had like every position on every issue at one point or another. He's not someone who really cares about consistency in that way, but his comments on Epstein in this manner in particular did surprise me. But what took me even more by surprise is the fact that he's now selling merchandise on this. This really blew me away. Check it out.
Check out our merch store, Fuentes.store. I have my brand new USA quarter zip. Check it out. This is high quality stuff. And I'm not just saying that. Some of the merch that we've done in the past, you know, we've been doing merch for a long time, and it's been sort of, some of the products are better than others. This is very high quality. 80% cotton, 20% polyester. US flag on the side. Very high quality, stitched on. And then we have the embroidered USA logo right here. And it looks pretty sharp. I mean, look at this. Look at this collar, zipper. It zips all the way up. little product demonstration. It does zip all the way up, in case you were wondering. So when it gets really cold, yeah, you could theoretically zip it all the way up. In theory, it is possible. In practice, too. If it gets cold, if you don't mind that, you can zip it all the way up. You can zip it all the way down. Maybe if you're in like a tropical climate, you get a little warm. And I think it looks sharp. Navy, red, embroidered USA logo, American flag. I think it looks great. What do you guys think? I think it looks great. Goes great with the hat. You know, this is a whole fit. This is a whole ass fit. So check that out. Fuentes.store. This is now my #1 bestseller on the store. We've sold over 1,000 of these already. They've only been here, I think, for a few days. We already sold over 1,000 of them. It's my #1 bestseller for the year so far. People love them. People are loving this product. And get it in time for spring. They ship in 2 to 4 weeks. You're going to want to wear this at Easter. You're going to want to wear this at the wedding party, or you probably wear a tuxedo to a wedding, but I don't know if there's like something happening around it, whatever kind of spring event you got going on. This is the perfect fit. It's a great conversation starter. People are going to say, wow, I love that quarter zip. Where'd you get it? And you could tell them, I got it on this island. I got it on this island. They were giving them away before the feds showed up. So check it out, Fuentes.store.
I love that it's specifically a quarter zip. Say what you will about him. Snake, two-faced, no principles. Fuentes still really is in tune with what's cool and trendy. I'm so glad that he took this from the YNs. So, for those of you who may not know, a couple months ago, like in November or December of last year, there are a lot of Gen Z black guys who started wearing quarter zips and then, almost as soon as it started, immediately complaining that white people hopped on this trend as soon as they popularized it. And now Nick Fuentes, of all people, is doing it. This is what black people get for caring more about fashion trends than the fact that their community is rotting from the inside out. Oh man, white people think we're cool, but we're not getting enough credit for it. Worst tragedy ever. But that's a rant for another video. I like that Fuentes himself has hopped on this trend. Even if this is the worst person ever to make a quarter zip of.
Sometimes you gotta be the villain. Epstein's my boy, dude. Let's just be honest. Epstein was cool as fuck. There, I said it. What are you gonna do? Go ahead, cancel me. Yeah, I said it. Jeffrey Epstein was cool as fuck. Now what? Go ahead, cancel me. Do it. So sometimes we have to be the villain. Sometimes we have to be on a villain arc. That's okay. I'll be a little unpopular. I've been unpopular before. I like it better.
He even dapped himself up at the beginning of this clip. It doesn't get better than this. This is peak comedy. But anyway, at first I thought this was run-of-the-mill engagement farming, or that Nick had really gone off the deep end with some of the tradcath stuff he's on. But then, upon reflection, it seemed there was a bit more nuclear strategery, as former President Bush would say, to this move, to this statement. And what I'm getting at is that this may be Nick attempting not simply to rage bait, but to actually get in good with the Trump administration again. Now, I know that sounds a little crazy, but hear me out. Nick has been, of course, very critical of Trump, even on the issue of the Epstein files. But if you undermine the pedophile accusations like Nick is doing right here, Epstein is kind of a nothing story at that point. The twisted nature of his abuses is the crux of why the public is interested in what's going on here. So without this as a basis for criticism of the mainstream MAGA movement, he's slowly but surely defanging his own audience in a notable way. This is one of the charges that grippers would have made against mainstream conservatives who still support Trump. Same thing liberals would say here. Oh, you're covering for an abuser, etc., etc.
And all of these feminists and all of their accomplices, the simps, they all want to say there's only two genders. They want to talk about reproduction and genitals. Okay, let's talk about reproduction and genitals. When do men and women reach the age of sexual maturity? It ain't 18. It isn't 20. I've seen women say, a 20-year-old girl is a literal child. No, sorry, she's not even a figurative child, let alone a literal child.
Age gap discourse among Gen Z is so busted. Like, the only people who are broaching this topic are either advocating for like insane stuff on certain very fringe circles in the far right, so-called, and then also you have people who think like even a 5-year age difference between two people is somehow inherently abusive. It's a complete mess. I'll give him that, if anything, even if this is an overall terrible point for him to be making.
Do you know what canon law in the Catholic Church says? It says the minimum age to get married is 14 for women, 16 for men. That's the canon law of the Catholic Church. So you want to pull rank on me with morality? I would take you there. And by the way, that's how it was for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Do you know when age of consent became a thing? Like 30 years ago. That is a second wave feminist artifact. But you people are not ready for that.
This is how he's bringing his tradcath purist audience, that segment of his audience, to heel on this issue.
I'm saying that the only reason that people are so horrified when people talk about like 16 and 17 not really being immoral, it's because we have a culture of casual sex and pornography and hookups and prostitution. That's why. Why is it considered completely depraved at age 17 and a half versus 18? Because we hate the idea of young, vulnerable girls being preyed upon by strange men, by pimps, by pornographers. That's why it is abhorrent, because there is something true about that.
As much as I don't like him as a person, I feel he is a negative influence on the right. This simply is not the direction I would expect his commentary to go if he were purely attempting to normalize something based on, for ideological purposes, trying to like normalize child marriage or something like that. I don't think it really makes sense for him to go about it this way. I don't think this is his shadow speaking in some sense. When you look at Nick Fuentes and the things he says, in my opinion, I don't think he cares about ideological consistency really at all. He may admire perceived purity in other figures like Richard Spencer, who he appears to look up to, but he doesn't really live this out. He's much more pragmatic and mercenary. And any given position he takes on an issue is actually to acquire greater political capital from a given group or audience, depending on the context or timeline of his career. So this is he's highly opportunistic. And I believe that's what we're seeing here with his commentary on the Epstein issue. If you'll notice, Trump has always deflected on the issue when asked about Nick Fuentes. He hasn't unilaterally condemned or praised him, despite meeting with him at Mar-a-Lago along with Kanye West some years back. And J.D. Vance has more aggressively, but still really just dismissed Fuentes as an annoyance, despite his repeated disgusting, scathing attacks on J.D. Vance's family, likely because there's still a push-pull dynamic here. They don't totally want to make more enemies than they have to. They know that Nick does have a sizable following, and there was a time where they felt they could use that to their advantage. And I think Nick is going to say these things about Epstein, see how the Trump administration responds, and then make his own determination from there as to whether or not to move forward and become more supportive of Trump and J.D. Vance, or continue being an opponent and a detractor. Anyway, my view on this issue is that this is more of these controversial statements on Nick's part regarding Epstein are more of a cynical political calculation than they are a function of him being a sexual deviant. And I've criticized him many times before. Ali Alexander, I totally get why people think this, although I do think that he is actually sort of attempting to pull strings here or shift things in his favor rather than making some sort of ideological statement that other people are supposed to follow from now until the end of time. I don't think what he said about Epstein here is born of genuine conviction. Though, of course, that's just my opinion. You are very welcome to leave yours in the comment section below. I think we're all on the same page here. Like, Epstein, still terrible person. why would you die on this hill? Doesn't make any sense. Terrible, terrible. But my point is more getting as to the why behind the fact that he said these things, so that's just my perspective on the issue. You're welcome to voice yours, and Red Channels will catch you in the next one.